The Sega CD. Wow, one of my favorite consoles. Yes, you heard that right, the Sega CD is awesome. The Sega Genesis and Sega CD is one hell of a gaming experience. You have loads of great arcade-style gaming, unique and weird titles, and some damn good RPGs. I got my first Sega CD when I was like 12 years old. I had Lunar and I had Dark Wizard. Within half a year, I managed to get Shining Force CD and Lunar 2. Just some absolute feasting on those games. And the local game store had something like 30 titles up for rental, so I was constantly getting my hands on new Sega CD games. Eventually, I got my hands on Snatcher. As a 12-year-old in 1994, I had no idea who Hideo Kojima is. Metal Gear Solid wasn't out for another couple of years, and the internet wasn't really a thing yet, and I was 12 years old. Cut me some slack. I didn't know who Kojima was, but I did know what Blade Runner and Terminator was, and this game looked a lot like Blade Runner and Terminator. So I rented it for the weekend and finished it in 2 12-hour sessions. I finished the game. Like I said, I was hungry for games back then. Snatcher occupied a large portion of my brain for literal decades after that. I only ever played it through the one time, and I never found a used copy to purchase for myself when I still had a Sega CD as a kid. But the game, characters, music, and even a lot of the individual story beats are still crystal clear in my mind. Randomly, just before Christmas this year, I was searching for some Snatcher dialogue for a thing, and while scrubbing through some videos on YouTube, I found a clip of Santa. Oh yeah, that's right, Santa is in this game. Oh yeah, the game takes place in late December. Does that make Snatcher a Christmas game? I should play this because it's Christmas time. And I did. I sat down and I played through Snatcher over a couple of days. And let me tell you, I had a hell of a good time playing through this game again. And now, I'm gonna talk to you about it, right here on RPG Fortress, even though it's not an RPG. Roll the intro. Snatcher first came to be way back in 1988. Developed and published by Konami for the MSX2 and PC 8801. Created by Hideo Kojima, plus a bunch of other people, Snatcher is a cyberpunk adventure game with visual novel elements and some occasional shooting scenes. Originally meant to have 5 acts, the MSX2 and PC 8801 games only have 2 acts. Kojima was hoping for a sequel as a chance to get the remaining acts out, but oops, that never happened. That being said, Konami did release the spin-off / reimagining SD Snatcher for MSX2 in 1990. This is a retelling of the story in the confines of a turn-based RPG with super deformed characters. In 1992, the game was ported to PC Engine, giving it a new home on home consoles. Originally being a PC game that shipped on a bunch of floppy disks, the PC Engine was a good place to port the game to. Fun fact, this is the first CD-based game Konami ever worked on. This version of the game was given a 3rd act as a means to close the story, as it was clear by this point that a real sequel was unfortunately not going to happen. Enter the Sega CD. After the moderate success of Lethal Enforcers on Sega CD, Konami wanted to bring over a title that had a bit more substance to it. Hey, let's port Snatcher for the 12th time. Cool. So they set to work on creating what would be the de facto version of Snatcher and the crown jewel of a very small collection of games on what would be an underrated system. Snatcher is an adventure game with a bit of visual novel and first-person shooter flavor splashed on top. You will be talking to a lot of people, investigating a lot of objects, listening to a lot of dialogue, and reading a lot of text. Aesthetically, it, let's say, borrows heavily from cyberpunk media, most notably Blade Runner, with the story and setting fitting nicely into that dystopian post-apocalyptic future setting that Neuromancer set up so perfectly. You know, that setting that every other cyberpunk author has borrowed heavily from. This game, like all of Kojima's later works, has bumper-to-bumper story scenes. Loads of scenes of talking heads, world building, lore dumps, and outside of those huge story scenes, there is a lot of reading to do. You will find that the main game loop is proceed from scene to scene and run through a list of actions on everything you see until given the chance to move on. The main actions that you can take are look, investigate, talk, and ask. Each area will have a bunch of things to interact with, but you can't use all of the actions on everything. You can't use talk or ask on a piece of equipment, but you can investigate characters like they are inanimate objects, usually resulting in some pretty silly responses. You have an inventory where you will be able to access story-related items when needed. Sometimes showing evidence to a character will unlock some dialogue or allow access to the next area. During some scenes, you'll also gain access to a junker car, giving you access to other areas to explore. You won't always be able to move between different areas, but when you are given the chance, make sure to interact with everything. You play as Gillian Seed, a recently hired junker who has amnesia and can't remember his past. A junker is basically a Blade Runner, Edge Runner, or Shadow Runner, depending on what flavor of cyberpunk you're more familiar with. You are out to solve the Snatcher menace that has recently gripped the city of Neo Kobe. Snatchers are malevolent androids who operate in winter climates. They infiltrate society and replace those in high-ranking positions. It's not immediately known why Snatchers act like this, but I bet by the end of the game you'll have it all figured out. Junkers are basically special cops set up to deal with the Snatcher menace. They are highly trained detectives with powerful hand cannons. So it's up to you and your crew to find out why Snatchers do what they do, and along the way, maybe even find out why you've got amnesia. Who's to say? The story is great. Yes, on first, second, and third glance, the game is just Blade Runner, but it does go a little bit deeper than that. There's also beats stolen from Terminator and Neuromancer. While on the surface, Snatcher is very familiar, the story has enough little twists and turns to keep you interested the whole time. Plus, there's also loads of lore and world building in there. The best part of the game is just talking to people and investigating things to uncover more world building and more lore. There are a handful of shooting segments in the game, but they almost feel tagged on as an afterthought. You just sit on a static screen and enemies will pop up, shooting range style. There are even civilians that will pop up that you need to avoid shooting. These segments aren't great, but they are an interesting enough distraction. The characters range from fun to, oh, this is definitely a stock cyberpunk character. Gillian is a lot like Rick Deckard from Blade Runner, but also has a bit of anime lead character syndrome baked into him. He's serious and reliable, except for all the times he isn't. The game gives you many opportunities to talk up / flirt / hit on women for quote-unquote comedy scenes, or you can just ignore them without losing out on anything. Gillian's sidekick is the wisecracking robot mascot Metal Gear. He looks like a little Metal Gear with a TV attached to him. Another fun character who is good for both comic relief when Gillian is the straight man, but sometimes Metal Gear will be the straight man and Gillian is the comic relief. It's a pretty solid setup between these two characters. The game looks good. The Sega CD is basically just a fancy Genesis, and that is hella aesthetic. For being a dystopian city, Neo Kobe has a lot of sections that are colorful and vibrant. Everyone from the main characters through to NPCs looks straight out of a late 80s / early 90s anime. The game's music is suitably 80s synth-pop influenced, and the OST is surprisingly huge. Snatcher is often heralded as the #1 reason to get a Sega CD, and I can't really argue with that. The system has a handful of terrific games, including a number of only Play It Here titles. There are many reasons you might want to hook up a Sega CD, but Snatcher is probably the most important one. The versions of this game that came before this one, MSX2, PC8801, and PC Engine, are all incomplete, and the ones that came out after this one, PS1, Saturn, don't really add a lot that can't be found in the Sega CD version. And I kinda like that. It still gives me some wiggle room to say, hey, the Sega CD isn't nearly as bad as what you've been led to believe. If you like cyberpunk, dystopian, post-apocalyptic media, you'll probably really enjoy Snatcher. If you really like late 80s, early 90s anime, you will probably really enjoy Snatcher. If you like adventure games and mysteries, you'll probably really enjoy Snatcher. It is definitely well worth playing, even if you aren't a fan of these things. It's just a really compelling world that Kojima and crew have hobbled together here. I would have loved to have seen some sequels, though. For RPG Fortress, I'm Richard. See you next time, and don't forget to hug a cat. Goodbye for now.